Generally, when there is a disagreement or conflict between two parties, the first thing they do is cut off communication with each other. This creates a communication gap, leading to misunderstandings. This happens not only in families at a smaller level, but also between countries at the international level. For example, in 2022, after Russia invaded Ukraine, the US cut off direct communication with Russia. While some indirect channels remained open to prevent escalation, the two countries were not directly engaging with each other. Now, if there is no dialogue or discussion, how can one country explain its position to the other side or understand the other country's perspective? Therefore, to resolve any conflict, it is always better to keep communication channels open. Conversation is a highly effective tool. Through dialogue, we can understand the other party's viewpoint and clear up misunderstandings. From the beginning, India has maintained that conflicts should be resolved through dialogue and diplomacy. Now it seems that this approach is being applied in the Ukraine conflict. US President Donald Trump recently spoke with Russian President Vladimir Putin over the phone. Their 90-minute conversation covered several important topics, including Middle East geopolitics, energy, artificial intelligence, the US dollar, and even Iran's nuclear program. Trump shared this information on his social media platform, Truth Social, describing the discussion as highly productive. This call is being seen as a positive step toward ending the conflict, which has been ongoing for nearly 3 years. Trump has consistently maintained that the Russia-Ukraine war must be stopped as soon as possible. In fact, he has stated several times that if he were president, this war would not have even happened. Trump is quite confident in his negotiation tactics. Even Vladimir Putin agrees that if Trump were president, things would have been different. He might not have had to invade Ukraine. The reason for this is Trump's willingness to consider Russia's security concerns. What does Putin want? That Ukraine should not join NATO. NATO's eastward expansion is a security threat to Russia, which is why Putin demands a guarantee that Ukraine will not join NATO. Only then, he believes, can a path to peace be created. Now, Trump has no problem with this long-standing demand from Putin. He's okay with Ukraine not joining NATO. For this reason, over a phone call, both leaders agreed to immediately start negotiations. The good news is that a direct communication channel has now been opened between the US and Russia. If everything goes well, we may see an in-person meeting between Trump and Putin in Saudi Arabia in the future. On the one hand, while Russia is quite happy with the US stance, on the other hand, Ukraine is concerned about America's diminishing support. Ukraine fears being sidelined in the peace talks. Under Biden, the US provided crucial support to Ukraine, helping it resist the Russian invasion. But after Trump's arrival, a significant shift has been seen in US policy toward Ukraine. For example, the US now states that it does not consider Ukraine's NATO membership a necessary part of the solution. Further, it says that Ukraine should not expect the situation to return to pre-2014 borders, as that is unrealistic today. If you remember, in 2014, Russia occupied the Crimean Peninsula, this part of Ukraine. And since the start of the war in February 2022, Russia has also seized approximately 20% of Ukraine. Now, Ukraine wants to reclaim all its occupied territories, including Crimea. However, according to the US, Ukraine should acknowledge that it cannot regain the territories seized by Russia. Therefore, the US believes Ukraine should abandon its unrealistic expectations in light of the current military and geopolitical realities. Instead of prolonging the war, Ukraine should recognize its constraints and focus on consolidating its current positions. Trump wants both Russia and Ukraine to stop fighting and move towards lasting peace so that suffering in the region ends and long-term stability can be achieved. Russia will have no problem with this, as it stands to gain from Trump's approach. It is getting 1/5 of Ukraine and a guarantee that Ukraine will not join NATO. The US, which has been Europe's primary security guarantor, is being seen stepping back from this role because Trump wants Europe to take responsibility for its own security. We are witnessing a shift in America's role as the leader of NATO. America wants NATO members to increase their defense budgets to 5% of GDP, as it will no longer tolerate an imbalanced relationship. According to Trump, Europe's security is no longer the primary focus of the US. Instead, Europe must take the lead in defending Ukraine, and the majority of future military aid to Ukraine should come from Europe. This shift has once again raised questions about the reliability of US support. One president provides billions of dollars in aid to Ukraine, supports Ukraine's NATO bid, isolates Russia, and strongly backs Ukraine's sovereignty and territorial integrity. Then after an election, another president takes office and demands rare earth minerals in exchange for financial support, deems Ukraine's NATO bid unnecessary based on his calculations, reaches out to Russia, shows readiness to offer concessions to Russia, and negotiates a prisoner exchange with Russia. This lack of continuity in US foreign policy towards Ukraine has led to doubts about the reliability of US support, as the two presidents have completely opposite approaches. Ukraine and European countries are shocked by Trump's stance. According to them, concessions are being given to Russia even before negotiations begin. Apart from Putin, Donald Trump also spoke separately with Ukrainian President Zelensky. Zelensky does not want Ukraine's sovereignty and territorial integrity to be compromised. He believes that America has sufficient power to pressure Russia to end the war and promote peace. However, according to Trump, the Ukraine war is Europe's problem. He plans to deal with Russia not based on European interests, but solely on American interests. Similarly, he will engage with Ukraine while prioritizing American interests. Ukraine will have to trade rare earth minerals worth $500 billion if it wants US support. This indicates that Trump will adopt a transactional approach to ending the Russia-Ukraine war. He will seek to resolve the conflict through negotiations, reduce US direct involvement in Europe, and encourage European nations to take an active role in their own security. In this way, Trump will focus on securing US borders and countering China's growing influence. As a result, we will see a shift in US foreign policy based on domestic priorities and strategic interests elsewhere.